Hi everyone, and welcome to Cloud Conversations. We are now on episode 26 with me, Kat Greenan, and I'm joined by my wonderful partner in crime, Peter. How are you doing today, Peter?
Hey, Kat, I'm really well. How are you? Are you well?
I'm good. I'm feeling very autumnal and spooky because the time of year where we have Halloween, we have autumn, and the leaves is coming up. So it's not October yet, but it almost is. So it's one of my favorite times of year. So I'm very excited. Very
Excellent.
happy
Yeah,
about
the seasons are definitely changing, aren't they? And
that.
I like this time of year as well. It's been a little bit too hot for me lately, so this is just right for me. So loving it. But I have the pleasure of introducing our guest this week, who is the fantastic Rene Modery. So Rene, welcome, a warm welcome to the show. How are you today, my friend?
Hi, good afternoon. I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Jolly good. So just briefly to introduce you, you're a Microsoft Office Apps and Services MVP. And you've been an MVP for 10 years, which we'll talk about as we get into the show.
Yeah.
And I believe the main focus of your work in the Microsoft environment is Power Platform, with the occasional excursions into Azure, and you've been authoring a little bit on Microsoft lists as well lately. So unless I've completely ruined it for you, can you just introduce yourself a little bit more and to our listeners and viewers? Is there anything I've left out there?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Rene Modery. I'm originally from Germany, but have been living here in Singapore now for quite a long time, actually. And I started working with SharePoint a long time ago. That brought me then to Office 365, which brought me then obviously to not just a bit beyond SharePoint, etc., and moving on to all the other things that you just mentioned, those technologies. So yes, I'm a big fan of what's happening in the cloud, obviously, with what's coming from Microsoft in that area. Basically, I saw a lot of change in the past 10, 15 years happening. And there's a lot of great stuff that happened, and I was happy actually that I could actually also share those the changes or contribute, basically sharing some of those experiences that I had over time, which then helped me contribute which helped me to contribute towards my MVP status as well. So that's the very short version of who I am.
Amazing.
Awesome stuff. So, as a 10-time MVP, though, that's incredible. I mean, I'm a baby MVP still. I'm still on year one, and I'm by no means taking for granted that I'll get re-awarded because who knows? But for you, is it about the community journey? Would you say is it community first, and the MVP award is sort of the icing, the cherry on the cake, if you like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in a way, the way you just described it, it was the same for me when I was first awarded. I was like, yeah, that's awesome, but didn't Microsoft maybe make a mistake or so? Because there are so many great people that I basically looked up to. Some other long-term MVPs back then, or big names in the community, and I always looked up to them. Saw the great community work they did, the presentations, the blog posts, just the content that they pushed out. And I thought, I'm that small guy, and I got that award. Let's see how long that goes, maybe a year or two, and I'll just keep doing my stuff, and let's see basically if I'll get re-awarded or not. And somehow it still continues happening. So this year I received it now for the 10th time, and obviously my perception changed now also a bit over the years. I'm a bit more, let's call it a bit more confident in regards to the work that I'm doing. But still, I'm looking around what other people are doing, also than other MVPs who might not have had 10 times awarded or so, or just a lot more awards, basically. But also then some that actually just joined recently or so, and I see what they are doing. I just think, whoa, that's awesome. Maybe I'm not doing enough again. So I'm still, pondering basically whatever is it I'm doing, is it maybe enough or not? But as you just said, basically, on the other hand, it's also like, I'm doing what I enjoy. I like to help people. I like to share my knowledge about what I'm working with. I like to help out people who've got specific questions regarding those technologies I'm working with, etc. And I mean, that's for me the key point in the end. Obviously, I mean, I'm not doing all that just so that, I get another MVP award in a year's time or something like that, but rather I do it because I was in the same situation before, that I was looking for help, and there were a lot of people who helped me before, and I just see it the same way. So I can help out now other people again, and hopefully then there are new people then joining as well, then who learned from us, and then basically we've got a continuous growth of knowledge sharing and new MVPs, etc.
Amazing. That's the 10 years. My goodness. I feel like I relate to what you're saying so much. And we were talking last week with our guest Nate about imposter syndrome, where you feel like you don't belong. And, there's so many people that you look up to and think, I can't be one of them. Can I really? So over the 10 years, I guess, has that changed for you? You mentioned you got more confident. In terms of how much you're contributing, do you find that you end up doing more because of your status kind of pulls you into different areas, or not so much? What's the difference really from now to when you first started, I guess?
Well, it changed a bit in terms of what I'm doing. So 10 years ago, I was more active online. I was very active in some, I forgot the name of it, but there was an Office 365 dedicated forum from Microsoft. So long before there was tech community or anything similar. And I was quite active back then, for example, really going online then and helping people who posted their questions. So you could say the grandfather of the tech community or something like that. So that's what I did back then. And I also then wrote some blog posts. But over the years, my perception of do I do enough and what do I do? Is it good enough or so? Sometimes I feel, again, a bit more confident in what I'm doing or so. Or I think, what I'm doing is maybe relatively decent sometimes. But then there are also times where I think, maybe could be doing more. I mean, especially in the past, close to 2 years now, 1.5, 2 years now, where everybody's stuck at home and you can't have your in-person events, etc. There were a lot of changes, and then you're just sitting at home thinking, previously I was organizing our local user group in person. That was a lot of fun. Now I'm doing it online, and obviously then there's that, how do you call it? There's a certain tiredness setting in when you're regularly just meeting online, and you just miss basically seeing those people and interacting with them. It's just not the same online. And there's that change happening, basically also how you feel about it. But on the other hand, I mean, it also opens up opportunities again. When I look at what I've done over the years and what others have been doing over the years, I mean, I don't think that everybody keeps doing exactly the same thing over and over and over again. But obviously, sometimes people have shifting priorities in life. It might be that you are in a certain stage in life at some point, so you've got more time, then suddenly there's something that happens and you just need to take a few steps back, and maybe you're not doing as much as you did before, but at the same time, you might actually be a bit more focused in terms of what you are doing. For example, for myself, when I became an MVP, I was married, but I didn't have any children yet. So children followed afterwards, and they became my priority. So previously I was sometimes sitting in the evening in front of the laptop and, going online, helping people or checking out the newest technology, all that kind of stuff. That changed now. So nowadays, while that might still happen, obviously, then, on the other hand, the kid comes and says, Daddy, can you, read something for me, play with me, etc. Then that changes basically, again, what I'm doing, how I'm doing. So, there has been also then that kind of change again in terms of, like I mentioned, what I'm doing and, how much I contribute, but also potentially then how good the contributions hopefully or potentially are.
Yeah, I relate to what you're saying there with video fatigue, definitely. And I can't relate with the children. I'm a child-free person, and but Pete could probably relate a little bit more to that.
Absolutely, yes. I can totally empathize with that statement. Children do sort of become your number one priority, without a doubt. And hey, that's a good thing. But
go on, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go on, Pete. Just jumping in there. I was going to ask just really quickly, when you're talking about your MVP contributions, I noticed you're doing something called an MVP challenge. And I had no idea what that was. And I had a look and I thought, what is it? I guess it's better getting it from the horse's mouth. What is the MVP challenge? Can you talk a little bit about about that?
So Microsoft has got so-called Microsoft Learn, so an online platform is part of docs.microsoft.com, where you can go in and where they publish a lot of learning modules for their technology. So a lot of this, for example, as preparation for exams, but also any other new technologies that they publish. They usually publish then some learning modules there that you can go in. So you can follow a specific path to learn more. Let's say, for example, about Power Automate. If you want to get started with it, you go to Microsoft Learn, and they teach you then how do you set up your first flow, how do you connect to, or how to use various connectors, all those kind of things. So it's really about not just reading the standard documentation, but going through some specific modules that explain certain things for you, that point to the documentation. There might be some hands-on labs, all those kind of things, just to get you prepared for working, again, with some specific technology. And what Microsoft did earlier this year was they said, hey, we want to promote that a bit more. So obviously, we want to do that through the MVP community. And while MVPs are usually quite knowledgeable when it comes to their, let's say, their main expertise or so, there's usually also something that they don't know or where they think they could be doing better or so. I mean, nowadays, we know that you're not just basically learning a technology right now, and then you don't have to do anything for 2, 3, 4, 5 years until maybe there's a newer version, but you're non-stop learning, obviously. There are constant changes, so you have to basically pick up your pace and regularly check what's new and, learn about those new things. And basically, the MVP challenge then was meant to encourage MVPs to, again, pick up a specific area, for example, Microsoft 365 or the Power Platform, something like that, and then go through a defined set of modules and learning paths that are published, that are publicly available, but also then share how do we actually approach that. So not just, I went through 50 modules and I learned a lot, I'm happy or so, but really explain then again also what did you do actually? How did you approach it? What were your expectations when you started to go through that learning path through those specific modules? Did you have any strategy when it comes to learning? Do you just basically read the text and says, click next, yes, at the end says you completed it and you think, all good, or something else? And really share that experience so that others are then also encouraged to participate in it. And others obviously meaning everybody else, not just MVPs, but everybody else, so that they can see, again, it is quite a lot of content out there that you can consume for free and learn. And it's really some great content there. So, for example, I specifically chose not Microsoft 365 because while I knew there's still a lot that I could probably do a more deep dive in, I chose something where I knew I don't have, too much experience with. So Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform. The Power Platform, I have a good amount of experience or so, but I thought, a bit more would be good. And Dynamics 365 was a bit like extremely basic. And my idea then of this challenge was really go in and go through those modules slowly, try to learn as much as possible, and basically also then, as mentioned, share how I approach that learning. So like I mentioned, not just reading the text and forgetting about it 10 minutes later, but really reviewing what does it say, maybe at the same time then open Dynamics 365 or Power Automate or Power Apps or so, and reviewing it there, doing some hands-on activities, those kind of things then. And the idea was then really that hopefully somebody else looked at what I was doing and might have followed me a bit or got encouraged to actually just also go in there and learn something themselves as well. Because in the end, the goal is not that I'm just learning something, but hopefully others will take up the challenge as well. Maybe not to learn exactly the same thing, but really to challenge themselves and say, hey, I could now learn more about a specific area. Why don't I just spend 20, 30 minutes a day to just go in and go through some of those learning paths, do some hands-on activities. And after a couple of days, couple of weeks, then, I will have learned something new that I can hopefully then also apply to my job or that will help me in some other way.
Definitely. That's such a good approach. I've done the Learn modules, and I do find myself just reading the material and just clicking, doing the knowledge check, and not actually absorbing any of the information. And I'll do it, and then I'll be like, I didn't actually read what I read, so I'll need to go back and write, okay, what was it again?
Yeah.
So you just get into that zone. But yeah, so I think that's really useful in reviewing actually how you're learning techniques. So that's really, really handy, I think. Definitely.
I love the Microsoft Learning Paths, I must admit, and docs.com. There is so much good content on there.
Yeah.
And as MVPs and as members of the community, if you're not MVPs even, but contribute to the community, most people that I've come across have a certain mindset and want to learn, have a passion for needing to learn new things, and it's quite addictive, isn't it? And Dynamics 365 is not something I've ever touched at all. I wouldn't know where to start with it, so I applaud you for sort of doing something out of your comfort zone like that. But and I've done similar things before. I've sort of looked into things out of my area, if you like. Thinking back to a blog post I did maybe a year or so back now, where I learned how to do a Teams chat bot, and that's come on a lot more since then. To be honest, it was a lot harder than when I did it, but things like that, it's just great to challenge yourself, isn't it? But looking back on that journey, this 10-year journey of you being an MVP and being in the community, put you on the spot here. Would you say there's one particular thing that you have done that stands out to you as being the most impactful, or the thing you've been most proud of in that journey?
That's hard to say. I mean, I would say actually, even the very beginning was probably something that was, in a way, unexpected. And the reason why I say that is maybe I should bring you back to many years ago. As a child, I was extremely shy. So growing up, I was still shy, didn't dare to talk to people or speak up or something like that. So it got a bit better over time, obviously, then, but still, I would say, even when I was in university, it was still a bit of a challenge. So on the way, basically, when I started working, and then when I also started working with SharePoint, etc., then I regularly had to actually give some internal presentations, which were, well, I would say at the beginning, like a nightmare for me. So speaking up in front of a few people who were sometimes relatively senior, like the CEO and the CFO, for example, that was really, raising my heartbeat a lot, making me extremely nervous, etc. And I think then looking at basically what I've done over the years, just at that very beginning, just taking those smaller steps, then saying in the end, yes, I mean, while those things might have scared me a bit, while I was probably still quite worried about, would I screw up? How do I present? All those kind of things. Just taking those smaller steps, they actually helped me a lot. And I kept taking those smaller steps, because it was not just, I'm doing one step, but really it's moving me forward in the end. So it helped me then again to move towards presenting at our local user group, present at a local conference, which then contributed again towards me getting that MVP award. And then obviously there was the assumption, now I'm an MVP, I should probably present more often as well then. So a bit of a challenge to myself again to make sure, I should actually speak more again. And I would say then that journey then actually moved me towards to where, let's call it right now. Not that I'm going to say, I'm perfectly where I am right now and everything's awesome. I'm at the end of where I should be going or so. No, there's still obviously a lot more. But I would say then comparing myself right now to, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, I can see then that initial thing that I was doing, which was really just getting out there and just presenting or so, I would say that really helped me a lot then over the years. Wow. And just moving forward, actually, that reminds me also, for example, that I heard from people that they were surprised, for example, when I started organizing a local conference here in Singapore, and we are doing it now for the 4th year this time with a slightly bigger focus. For example, Kat is going to present as well here. So we're doing it here for the region Southeast Asia. And I mean, just looking at that I'm now not just somebody who shows up somewhere and presents, but also then tries to actually organize something so that other people have that opportunity to present. I think then that would not be the situation right now if I had not started to, push myself a bit to start presenting many years ago.
I love that, and you're giving back now. You've learned and you've benefited from the people who've been on that journey before you, walked the path before you, MVPs, community members, and now you gain from their experience and gain that confidence, and you can pay it on and do even more, which is a story we hear so often, and that's great to hear about your event there. You must let us know how people can find that if you want to plug it. Is there a site you can tell us about?
We have it. So it's amssea.asia. So AMS Southeast Asia.asia, simply said. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, we will include that in all of the links that we put with this show when it goes out. Absolutely fantastic, and I will definitely be checking that out. And Kat, you're speaking at that one. Did I hear?
I am.
There?
So when you say you're organizing to give other people the opportunity, I'm starting my journey in the community. So you have, proof of the pudding. I'm here. I got the opportunity from that event that you've organized. So yeah, thank you. I'm really excited to present. I can't remember what I'm presenting actually. I think it's either Power Apps or Data Loss Prevention in Teams. One of the two. I think it might be two actually. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be a good event.
I mean, as organizer now, I see it as well that you get we received really a lot of submissions from a lot of people. So over the years, then we started relatively small, but we are constantly growing. And this year we received 160 submissions or so from 80 people, something like that. And you just look at that number of people, you look at who they are, etc. And while there are obviously some relatively established names, then there are also some, let's call them newer people who might not have been around, for example, a few years ago, or whom you might not even have heard of before. But then you just look at, hey, what do they want to do, etc. And it's just, again, such a great thing to see, hey, there's new blood coming into the community who really wants to help out, present, share the knowledge, etc. And I mean, that's what's exciting me nowadays as well, then to have not just all the established people around, but also new people joining and bringing new points of views and new knowledge, new experiences, etc.
And how is it organizing an event like that, Rene? How are you doing it on Microsoft Teams or a different platform? What are the challenges involved in that?
Yeah, we're doing it on Teams. So last year we basically did it online because we had to. We held in-person events in 2018 and 2019 in Singapore and Malaysia. And 2020, we want to do the same thing again. But obviously, COVID-19 came. And while we were hoping to hold in-person events last year, we also knew that it couldn't happen. So we went online and decided, we're not just doing Singapore and Malaysia online, but let's do it for the whole region, Southeast Asia. And we also then decided we're not going to try to use any new technology or so, something that we're unfamiliar with, or so we use something that we all know perfectly well, or relatively well, so Microsoft Teams then. And while there were some smaller hiccups, obviously, there was always something that you don't think of before the event or so, then it went actually in the end relatively well. So no issues with audio or video or so, no major concerns regarding do we need to train the presenters, for example. That went relatively well. And we're doing the same thing again this year because experience has shown there might be also other technologies that or other solutions that might be potentially maybe even better sometimes or more focused. But we know that set of technologies that are available to us here, Teams is working perfectly fine for us. It's extremely stable, working well. So we'll just continue using it again this year as well.
Yeah, I think Teams has kind of proved itself the last year and a half, hasn't it? I think you're in good hands with Teams. But you do see a lot of events. I mean, Microsoft themselves are doing a lot of different things with things like AltSpace VR and the like. But you're in safe hands with Teams. I think you do right to do it that way. Awesome stuff.
So I guess I had another question, moving topics slightly and looking at technology. Is there a common myth in Microsoft 365 or Azure that you would like to debunk, if there is one?
Honestly, I find that a pretty hard question sometimes. The reason why I'm saying it is that sometimes you're too focused on the things, so that you're not fully aware of what people that are not as deep into the technology as you are, how they perceive things. I mean, I still like to look around in forums. I'm part of several Facebook groups where new people come in and say, oh, I just started working with SharePoint, with the Power Platform, with Teams, etc., and ask very simple questions or so. But that keeps me still a bit like closer to how people who starting from scratch, basically how they experience it. But for me, basically, I might be sometimes so, at least for Microsoft 65, so deep in that I don't even fully, how to say, to me, it's just the way it is. So I'm not even really sure whether there are any common myths or so that are floating around in the end. So I can't really provide a proper answer to that.
No, that's fair enough. And I think you have to, I guess, take that step back and be around those people who maybe don't have the experience with the technology. So if I think about where I've been speaking, do kind of end user training and work with people who haven't used the technology or they're just starting to use the technology. And if I was going to say it, the myth that I would want to debunk, well, I'll take the opportunity, is that Teams and SharePoint take up a huge amount of storage, which sometimes they can. But the perception that I've heard from quite a lot of people that I've been speaking to is that you have to pay a lot of extra money for storage. And you have to buy extra storage to use these tools in the organization, and it's really just not the case. We've struggled really to get to the stage where you have to buy extra storage for SharePoint, and it's just more storage, and then it's just more. I got to pay for this and da. So that's what I would say. It's definitely not the case. Fair play if you're hitting that storage limit. You have to pay. You can pay for extra. It's not a huge amount of money to buy extra storage, but we've never come into the situation where anybody has. So that's, I guess, one myth that I would want to debunk is.
But that's quite an interesting thing that you just mentioned, because I have to actually explain from my point of view, my company's point of view. We are a extremely large company, so I specifically work for one of our operating companies with 40,000 employees worldwide, approximately. And when I look at the amount of storage in our tenant, we far exceeded it actually, because for a very technical reason, which is compliance. So we had to turn on retention policies, and because we're in a very we're basically in the media and advertising industry, meaning obviously there are a lot of, sometimes, for example, presentations get prepared, people put in high resolution pictures and videos, and then your presentation is suddenly 200 megabytes and growing even more. And then you save it and you update it live with a few other people. And every time you save, you create a new version. And every time you create a new version, you save another 200 megs, 200 megs, 200 megs. And it just sums up. And we noticed that actually, especially in the past 2 years with people working from home or so, then there was just a huge content growth again that, it just went crazy. But we are basically the extreme end, I would say. That's really the first time that I encountered it. And basically 2 years ago, we're still well within that limit. And just basically, I think, because of some changes in the past 2 years then, and because of, again, those retention policies that we have in place right now, things went, I don't want to call it crazy, but we're basically working on cleaning it up now and on those other things. But again, it's something that you usually, from our point of view, you don't think about, you've got so much storage in there because there's so much storage provided to you by default. For a lot of us, we just take it for granted, whereas other people sometimes then get that concern again, like you just described. We need to buy more storage at some point, we're running out of it, etc. But definitely something to look out for.
Agreed. I've never come across a customer who's had to purchase that extra storage. There's always been enough there with what's in the tenant or with licensed users. But there is a misconception. I completely agree that extra storage, were you to need it, it's expensive, and it's really not. It's I've had customers come to me and say, well, if we need this, I don't think we'd go the native Microsoft route. We'd maybe look for some sort of alternative cold storage elsewhere. And I'm thinking, you really don't need to do that. But a lot of people have that mindset.
Definitely. Well, I'm glad we've debunked that for anybody listening. if you're thinking about buying storage, you don't need to. And if you do, it's cheap. So there we go. But I was looking at, Rene, your blogs, and I just read your latest blog, and it was so fascinating, where you were using Azure Cognitive Services to help with your children's homework. I just thought that's such a great title. So for those who haven't read it, and who maybe don't know about the technology, can you explain a little bit about that? Because I just found it so fascinating.
Yeah, so just the background information is that I live in Singapore. My wife is Singaporean Chinese. My kids are obviously then half Chinese, and they, as part of our local education system, they learn Chinese then as well. So they often have some homework where they just need to basically write down some sentences, memorize them, learn some new words, characters, etc. And while I was able to help them a little bit with the very simple words, it also meant then, now that they're getting slowly a bit older, their Chinese is just going way beyond what I know and understand and can help them with. And while my wife tries to help them as well, then because of the nature of her job, it also means that sometimes, she comes home late in the evening, and obviously you don't want to put your kid in front of the homework when they're about to fall asleep. So what I thought is I've got basically some text in front of me, some Chinese, and I could try to figure out each individual word slowly, what it means by, trying to do some writing somewhere manually or so. But I could actually now also use then Azure Cognitive Services. So the idea was, I take a picture of their homework. So again, that sentence or those sentences that they have to learn, and take that picture, run it through Azure Cognitive Services, which first of all extracts those Chinese characters, so does some OCR, then takes that extracted text and translates it into both English so that I can actually understand what it really says, but also then into the romanization Hanyu pinyin so that we can then also basically tells me then how to pronounce things in a way then. So I take that image, have it scanned, have it, not scanned, have it OCR'd, have it then translated, and the output then helps me then to sit down with the kids and tell them, okay, now we learned this specific sentence or this specific word, this is what it means, etc. And the idea was that it should be hopefully relatively simple. That's what I was hoping for and what I was expecting. And what I wanted to do is really, that was more of a proof of concept that I thought of one afternoon and decided to sit down in the evening. I wanted to make it as simple as possible so that I can do it quickly on demand. I don't need to do any big setup of things, but rather what I decided, I'm just going to create a small PowerShell script, and that PowerShell script should then call Azure Cognitive Services and do all that work for me, basically. And in the end, it turned out to be, as I described, relatively simple. So there's, I don't know how many lines of code, but most of it is really just, take that image, send it to Azure. What you get back is the text. Send that text back again to Azure to translate it. And that's it in the end. And I then did some additional fancy stuff with, I'm going to generate my own image now, where I've got basically the original Chinese text and the translated English and the Hanyu pinyin next to it. So I know what each of them means, etc. But really the idea is then I'm taking that existing technology from Azure, and just by taking then a picture and running it through that script, basically, I then get some output that helps me then to sit down with the kids and basically go through their homework with them so that we can then do it. And the good news is, one time actually my wife, again, was working late. I had to sit down with my daughter because she had basically an A4 sheet of paper with a lot of questions, and she had to answer things, and it was luckily multiple choice, but she was struggling. I had no clue at all about what the text usually said. Some characters I recognized, most of it I didn't. So luckily I ran it through that script, and in the end, and we were able to complete that whole A4 paper, answer all those questions in the end. We understood what is asked for. We were able to then figure out what's the right answer, hopefully. And luckily, then she even got all of that correct. And so that was really like for me then, okay, that small script might not be something technology super fancy. It's relatively simple, but it's proven its worth a lot already just by helping us with some simple daily activities in the end. Yeah.
That is the best use case
Yeah.
I feel
Yeah,
like I've ever heard. I'm going to use
I love
that.
those simple things in the end where you don't
Yeah.
have something very fancy. It's just maybe a very small solution, but it helps you with a very specific use case just perfectly. And the script is not perfect right now, for example. It helps me with Chinese directly. And while, for example, Azure Cognitive Services would allow me to theoretically plug in a lot of different languages and translate to a lot of other different languages, for my case, it's working. For other people, they would have to adapt it. But hey, I'm not trying to solve everybody's problem here right now, but other people can look at it and modify it according to their needs if they wanted to, and should hopefully help them as well if needed.
Amazing.
It's for
So
sure
make
going to
you
give
check
people
out
ideas.
the blog.
Definitely do, yeah. You get a lot of inspiration from that for sure. And I imagine that Chinese is quite a challenging language to learn. And there is different versions as well, isn't there? Simplified and traditional, I believe.
Yeah. But traditional is only used in Hong Kong and Taiwan. So Singapore uses simplified, which I'm happy about because some of those traditional characters have contained a lot of strokes. The simplified is easier, and at least for me, then it makes it a bit easier to quickly try to recognize it, etc. But yeah, it is a tricky language to learn, especially when you are basically, let's call it a bit older. I notice my daughter learns it relatively well, obviously, because she's growing up with it, and then it's much easier in the end.
Yeah.
While it's not as easy as, again, because we're a mixed race household, it's not as easy for her as for somebody who's, for example, growing up in a Chinese-speaking household. It's still something where you can see, yes, for the kids, it's, if they sit down, if they do their thing, then, sometimes it just comes natural to them,
So I actually lived in China for 6 months when I was 22, and I managed to pick up some of the language, and it's incredibly difficult only in terms of the pronunciation because of the tones. What I found was there was no tenses, and there was like one descriptive word. So pretty, beautiful, lovely, it's all just one word. So that makes like so much easier. There's no real grammar. So if you, in your head, you would say a sentence in Chinese that sounds like it's broken English, but it's perfectly, it's perfectly correct Chinese sentence. But I couldn't I couldn't read any of the symbols. I knew the symbol for meat and no, because when I was there, I wanted like a meat dumpling, so like I had to look at which one was meat and which one wasn't. But yeah, when I remember when I was there, I had to listen to people saying the word for me to then pronounce it, because if I read it, I wouldn't be able to hear the right tone, because if it goes up, you can't just go, oh yeah, it has to be a specific mind blowing. That's an amazing language, absolutely amazing. But yeah, tough.
Fascinating. Wow.
I might use your your cognitive services to help me.
That sounds absolutely
cool,
amazing. So Rene, your first language, I'm going to guess, I'm going to take a stab, is going to be German.
Yes. Yeah.
So at what point of your life did you learn English? Did you learn English at school or later on?
That was in 5th grade onwards. So when I was 10, nearly 11, if I'm not wrong, should be the case. Yeah. So relatively late compared to others, obviously then, but yeah.
And I'd be interested to know
so
how
much. I loved it so much that
go on ahead, yeah.
I loved English so much, or languages so much, that during my A-levels, for example, I chose English and French as my 2 main subjects. But English I use every day. French I haven't used since then, basically. So
how many languages? How many languages can you speak?
Well, that depends in the end, because my wife likes to say that my German got a lot worse because now I'm struggling to translate something from English into German sometimes. But so obviously native German, English fluent, French is just, I'm not used to it anymore, so I can still read it. Speaking is difficult. Hearing is, if it's slow, I understand it. If it's fast, then it's troublesome. And Chinese is like a very basic level. So I can listen to my wife talk to her family, so understand roughly what's happening. But if you ask me then to say something, it's extremely basic again.
Yeah, it'd be interesting because Teams is developing constantly with the translation that's built into it, and I'm going to be working on a bit of a blog post on that very, very, very soon. So it's very interesting to me, but I wonder how it will cope in real life conversations with things like English to Chinese, German to Chinese, or all of those sort of combinations. It's going to be really fascinating because it's come a really long way, hasn't it? And amazing the stuff Microsoft is doing with it, with this sort of technology.
Absolutely.
But how hard was English to learn? I'm just if you can recall, because I'm thinking as somebody who only speaks English. I did a little bit of French in school, but not enough that I remember it now. And that when you look at the English language, it's got a lot of challenging aspects to it. Like we spell knife with a K and spell pneumonia with a P and things like that. And there are a lot of words that are the same but mean different things. So was it quite difficult?
I would actually say no. I mean, over the years, English was always one of my best subjects in school. Well, there were usually some smaller mistakes here and there, so it was really nothing that I struggled with ever. I think the main trouble I had with English is that I learned it in school, but first time I came to Singapore, into an English-speaking country, I didn't understand I didn't understand the verb, but it was extremely difficult for me to actually hold conversations and understand something at the beginning, because you're just used to your standard school English that's quite standardized. But the moment you get thrown into another country, then for the first few weeks, you just, I don't know, it's just a huge difference between what you hear in school and what's basically gets spoken out there. Yeah. But I would say then, after then, basically, again, experience makes one better. So over time, then obviously it just means you just use it over time, and it just becomes a second nature in the end.
So cool, because you've traveled a bit, you've dabbled in the travel. So I read that you were like in Europe, around Europe, obviously Germany, Singapore. Can you tell us a little bit about your travels and why you've moved around so much? Is Singapore your favorite out of all of them? I assume because you live there.
So I was living in Germany, studying in Germany, and I saw my future in Germany. But back then, while I was studying, we had to do an internship for 6 months somewhere, and I decided I'm going to go somewhere that's a bit more exotic. So I didn't want to do it within Germany, probably also not within Europe, because while obviously there are differences whether you are in Germany, in the UK, in France, Spain, wherever, or I still wanted to go somewhere that's a lot more different, but at the same time not too different. For example, going to China would have been impossible for me. I wanted to go somewhere I can still hopefully speak that language, even though I debunked it just a minute ago. And somehow I discovered Singapore, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go there. They speak English, and found an internship here, came here, had a huge culture shock, obviously, during my first night here, and probably during the first week or so, how things were and how they weren't what I was used to. But I liked it here so much. Then after some time, I thought, I'm going to come back here again, because I knew my internship's going to be over at some point, and I need to go back to Germany to finish my studies. But I want to come back, and that's what I did in the end. I went back to Germany, more or less finished my studies, just had to basically write my thesis, and went back for that then to Singapore to start working here and writing my thesis here in the end. And I decided I'm going to stay here as long as I like it, meaning I'm young, I'm not attached, I don't have basically anything that's holding me back. I'm just going to go to Singapore. If I don't like, or once I don't like it there anymore, I can still go back to Germany again, and let's see what the future then brings us. But I then got a great job in a company here in Singapore, started working with SharePoint again. And that brought me then around the region a lot. I was implementing SharePoint here in Asia Pacific for that company. So I got to China, went to Japan, went to a whole lot of other countries here. And it was really fascinating because I didn't, again, basically, I mentioned I saw myself basically starting to work in Germany and live in Germany, all those kind of things. But then I got all those additional experiences here. And that was just a wonderful thing, getting to, go to India on a business trip and really flying into India, working in their local office for a while, speaking with them, walking outside a bit. And while it didn't allow me, obviously, to explore everything in detail or so, sometimes you still got a bit of time outside. And there were a lot of smaller, really wonderful experiences that I then had in a lot of countries. So I really enjoyed that time then. And as mentioned, I loved Singapore a lot, liked it here. So I was still staying here for a long time, met a girl, married her, and
The rest is history.
yeah.
Hey.
And yeah, at some point she actually then said, "Oh, I also want to live in Europe." Like I said, she's Singaporean, so she never lived in Europe before. So while we've been there on holiday, then she said, "Yeah." There was a point in time when I was looking for a job, and we said, "No, let's just move to Europe then." And that's why we moved to Switzerland, because I found a job there. And we moved over there for 3 years, but we knew it's going to be for a limited period of time only. So initially we said 2 years. In the end, it was then 3 years because both kids were born over there. And we wanted to basically just wait for a while until we come back to Singapore. But yeah, 5.5 years ago, then we came back to Singapore again. And coming back to that part of the original question is, where do I like it most, or is Singapore the best? So obviously, I mean, there are a lot of great things in a lot of different countries. So if you ask me, do I miss Germany? Yes. Do I miss everything in Germany? No, there are great things in Singapore, which I love being here. But I also love some things about Germany, which I don't have here. There are things in Switzerland, which, I miss them in a certain way, obviously. I mean, I didn't have them in Germany. I didn't have them in Singapore. So overall, I'm happy where I am right now. But again, I'm not going to tell you, Singapore is the best in everything or so. There are lots of things, obviously, where I then, have that longing to, would be nice to, again, see Swiss mountains again, or something like that in the end.
That's absolutely amazing. Yeah. So you've traveled quite a bit then. My goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm very
now
jealous.
With kids, it changed again. So when I do job interviews, or when I did job interviews in the past few years, one of the things was always like, do I have to travel regionally? Because while I enjoyed doing that when I was younger and didn't have kids or so, then now it's also like, I don't want to spend 2 weeks away from them or something like that all the time. And I'm happy to really just stay within the country. Yeah.
It's like you got a lot of it out of your system already, though. The traveling. You did it enough for most people.
Yeah. When you have a family, you do find yourself wanting to travel a bit less, I find, organically. But what a lot of places you've been, though, without a doubt. I've been a few countries, but nowhere near as many as you have. And Germany, though, is one place I have been to a few times. I used to go there for work a few years ago for a company I used to work for. And I used to fly into to Frankfurt, and then it was about an hour's drive from Frankfurt Airport to the place where my company was. It was a place called Grunstadt, and right in the wine region. It was a really pleasant little place, and there was a town there called Bad Dürkheim, which is where I stayed, which was absolutely beautiful. Whereabouts were you in Germany when you grew up?
Not too far away from what you just mentioned. So also it's basically from Frankfurt 1 hour approximately towards the south. So the so-called Black Forest, that's sometimes a bit more known. So not quite in the Black Forest, just you could say at the northern edge of it. But that area where you travel a bit towards the west, for example, you go into that that area with a lot of vineyards, etc. Or if you travel south again, you go into the Black Forest area. Those kind of really nice places in the end. And that's for example, what I mentioned earlier. There are things I miss about Germany. That's one of it, basically being able to travel to all those smaller towns, which might have their own, I don't know, local charm. They've got maybe a small castle, or they've got a specific vineyard or something like that. That's the thing I right now actually miss the most here in Singapore. Because being a multi-million city in a small island, it's 40 minutes from east to west, and you've seen it, both corners.
Amazing.
I love Germany, though. I do miss it. The last time I was there was, I think, 2014, and the last time I went was for that job, which I'm no longer at. But you mentioned these quaint little towns and little things that are unique to them. It made me think of one of these places that I was taken to by my colleague who hosted me there. They had I think the biggest barrel in the world, and you could actually go inside it and eat and drink in there. It was quite
It
fantastic.
sounds even familiar. I heard about it before as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a picture of me inside it somewhere, but can't remember exactly the little town where it was. But my friend also took me to a football game over there as well. He was a massive fan of the football team Kaiserslautern, and he took me to a game there, which was really cool. But I really enjoyed the food as well. The schnitzel and the bratwurst and so many good dishes. I mean, it would be different for me now because I'm vegetarian now, so I don't know. And it's challenging to eat vegetarian, and goodness knows how vegans cope, even if you travel within certain places in the UK. So, but food's always part of the journey as well, isn't it? The different food and drink of the cultures, which I always enjoy.
Definitely. I actually got engaged in Berlin. That was on Christmas Day. That's where I got engaged. So Berlin will always be part of our history.
Yeah. I got engaged in Paris, right opposite. Right opposite Notre Dame Cathedral, on a little bench, and did it the proper way, all traditional, down on one knee, and had no idea we were being watched. But from a bridge above, when Louise had said yes, we were applauded, and there was
that's so cute.
just like being in a movie.
That's so nice.
My wife still teases me that I didn't actually go down on one knee because I didn't have any specific plan, so I just got the ring. But the moment I had the ring, I was like, oh, no, I have to do it. I have to do it quickly. So basically, I think 2 days after I got the ring, then I proposed to her. But I was so nervous that I think my knees were shaking, and I couldn't go down on one knee or anything. So she still teases me to this day about it, actually.
Well, my other half didn't get down on his knee either, but it was Christmas morning, so we just woken up, so I'll let him off.
Louise was very receptive to my proposal, and I remind her of this all the time. Her exact words after I'd asked the question were, "Yes, put it on. Give me the ring."
Oh, so cute.
Way back in 2004, that was. So absolutely brilliant. Anyhow, I want to talk a little bit about your book, which I can really relate to, being a fellow author. And you have recently co-written a book with another Microsoft MVP, I think he is, isn't he? Is it João Ferreira? I am hoping I have done that name justice and pronounced it reasonably correctly. If you're listening, João. But can you tell us a little bit about the book, Hands on Microsoft Lists, it's called, isn't it? And how it came about and what it was like writing that.
Yeah, so basically I was approached by the publisher, by Pact, and they asked me, do you want to write a book? And I thought, I'm not sure if I want to, because I know that while I have a blog and while I try to blog regularly, it's something that I've been always, in a way, struggling with. Sometimes a blog post nearly writes itself and it's out in an hour or so. And sometimes I'm just sitting there thinking the content just, I don't know, days later, it's still not done. And I might have still some older drafts that are still in progress. And a whole book is quite a big thing in the end. And I previously was one of many co-authors of 2 other books that we wrote before, for SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013, a long time ago, but that was just one chapter. So I can't remember how many pages, but again, one chapter is, let's say, 15 pages, something like that, so manageable. And now thinking, when Pact approached me, do I want to write a book? My initial thought was, I'm tempted because it would be an interesting challenge. I don't just want to sit here and do the same things over and over again or so. Sometimes I need to push myself, like I mentioned earlier, with pushing myself to do presentations. So maybe I should push myself to write a book because, again, English is not my native language. Sometimes I want to say something and I realize it's a bit tricky for me to express myself properly or clearly. But if I write it down, then sometimes, it can help me basically to formulate my my thoughts in a much clearer way sometimes, because I think about it much more. How do I want to say things and put it in there in wording, etc. Either way, then I told him, I want to do something. sounds interesting. And I suggested, Microsoft Lists was relatively new. There was nothing out there. And I thought, that's something I started to look at much closer anyway. And if I could do that. And they came back and said, yeah, okay. But there's also another guy who also wanted to do something. So that's when they introduced me to João. And basically we got together and said, okay, let's basically prepare that outline. Let's see if we can do it together. We're very eager to do something. And hopefully we can come up with a nice proposal for a book. So we then sat down. I think the initial outline was done by João, and then I put in my ideas as well, then which I had separately written down, something like that. So we had basically a couple of Teams calls then just to make sure that we agree on what we want to put into that book, because obviously you want to have like a nice story from beginning to end, not just random chapters, but something where somebody can pick up the book and read it from start to finish and says, I learned something along the way. And so we did that, was accepted, and then we started writing it. So we had a very clear approach in terms of who writes what. So for each chapter, there was one main author. That person then wrote that whole chapter, and the other person then just did a review. Again, is it clear? Is something not clear enough? Is there something that's missing potentially, etc.? Doing that basically that first kind of review. And that's how we did it. What I still noticed is, I was still struggling with things because I was trying to explain something that you try to, again, explain it in very simple words in the end. And that, I think, was the one thing I was struggling with initially, because sometimes I'm too focused in the technology. So I know how things work, and I could say, you click here and do this. But sometimes you need to take a step back and think about, okay, somebody who never worked with that before, they still want to understand it. So they have to come and say, okay, where do I need to go? What do I need to do? What are the implications? What is happening there? Why do we do something in a certain way? That's what they have to consider. So I think initially then I was a bit slow in writing. So João was pushing out chapter after chapter, and I was getting worried because I'm still like, I don't know, falling behind, etc. But was good in the end. And so managed to catch up, completed then, and was then published in, was it July or August? I forgot actually. The year is, I don't know, it's been 9 months now, but it feels like much, much longer somehow. So book is now out, and the goal that we had when writing this book was really that somebody who has got who doesn't have any experience with Microsoft Lists can pick it up. They should have some experience with SharePoint, for example, obviously have some experience basically with Microsoft 365, but they don't need to be experts in anything. So they can pick it up. They can get started with building their first list, structuring it, putting in content, etc. And then there are certain additional chapters that then talk about in more detail about some further possibilities, like how can you make your list, simply said, look nicer. So it's not just a standard list that we've seen for years, but rather something really fancy looking. How can you customize it to your needs? How can you use then, for example, Power Automate to run a flow whenever something happens in your list, and not just basically have some static data, but also get some more value out of that data that you have in your list by, again, kicking off some business processes, etc. And book is out. Really happy that we managed to complete it. And have to say then it was, again, the writing process was something that I was initially quite eager to complete within a month, and I learned then obviously sometimes things don't write themselves so easily and quickly, and sometimes you need to spend that time actually going through things a bit more slowly and carefully to make sure that what you're writing again is clear, people understand it clearly, you bring it over in a very understandable way, those kind of things then,
And the process is very, very detailed, isn't it? Because when you submit a chapter, it's then reviewed by a packed person for grammar and conciseness and all that sort of stuff. Then it goes to a technical reviewer who have their thoughts on it and can bring their ideas to it as well. And then by the time the book is almost ready to be published, the technology can change as well. So you got to go back and make some changes. So I fully understand the that process, having been through it myself. But it's such a rewarding experience when it's there and it's released and it's well received. And I have read your book, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's very, very easy to follow, and people coming to it who know nothing about Microsoft lists will find it easy to follow and learn things, I think. So I loved it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant, a great job, and I gave it a 5-star review on Amazon. So
thank you very much for your good feedback.
Very good work.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Anyhow, where are we at? We've talked about the book. Let's talk a little bit about, just as we start to wind things up and get to the end of the show. If you have any spare time left after all of your work and community interests and your life as a husband and father, what do you like to do in your spare time? Have you got any particular hobbies or interests outside of all that in your career and community life?
Yeah, so if you're watching this on YouTube or so, you will see the things here behind me on my wall. If you're listening in, I'm just going to describe it. I've got a couple of comics behind me here. I'm decorating my mini office wall here. So I'm a big Star Wars fan. I'm a big comic fan, and I like to collect comics. Sadly, I'm not reading them as much anymore as I did previously. I've got a huge backlog. I don't know how much, but I think it's just looking over there, basically at the pile, it looks like a couple of months that I collected over time, because there's a lot getting published and I collect it, but I couldn't find enough time to read it so far. But yeah, that's one of the big things that I'm doing in whatever spare time I have, actually. And
cool.
That's so cool.
Dressed for the occasion. Look.
Yeah, nice.
Amazing.
A fellow Star Wars a geek. I absolutely love Star Wars. Always have. And I'm old enough to remember when the first ones were released at the cinema. And it's funny as Star Wars fans. There's a lot of different generations of Star Wars fans, and the older ones, the purists, if you like, who seem to think that they own Star Wars for some strange reason, are often quite snobbish about some of the other iterations of it. Where do you sort of sit? Do you like them all? Is there some do you not like the prequels, not like the sequels? How do you feel about them?
So generally, I like most of it, I would say. Obviously, there's I have strong concerns about the sequels and how things didn't quite work out the way they probably should have worked out. But I'm still somebody who's still quite optimistic about Star Wars. I mean, you just mentioned a lot of people who are very purist and very snobbish about things and saying, yes, whatever, for example, George Lucas wrote and did, that's the only real Star Wars. Anything else isn't real Star Wars, etc. But I'm usually very excited about what gets published. There are people who complain about Disney a lot, for example. I'm still taking the approach of, I want to see it first before I complain about it. I might not like it. I will say it if I don't like something, but just because, for example, I don't like a certain movie doesn't mean that I'm starting to dislike everything else from let's say, for example, coming out from Disney. So just looking back, for example, what was published relatively recently, so in recent years, obviously, I mean, when we look at how The Mandalorian was published and then also received, I mean, we saw that, wow, that was really a huge fan service. There was something that was not just done for the fans, but also by strong Star Wars fans. That was such a big, I don't know, like a ode to, how do you say it in English? Sorry, I'm going to phrase it a bit differently. That was such a big love letter to Star Wars in the end. Saying,
homage.
Yes, correct, yeah. So there are those kind of things then where I say, yes, those are the things that still keep me excited. So even moving forward, there's still so much in the pipeline. I'm not expecting all of that to be great or so. There are things that will certainly be a disappointment at some point or so. But looking forward, looking at what's coming up in later this year or early next year, then with the upcoming new series, a couple of them, I'm still very excited again, I would say. The sequels might have, tracked me down a bit, not to the point that I became completely, unhappy about all kind of things. But yeah, I can see that, things are sometimes moving again in the right direction. And I'm very, very happy about a lot of things that came out in recent years.
Yeah, Star
How
Wars
about you,
is good
Kat? Are you a
fun.
fan?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a diehard fan. I've seen all the films, and there were sequels that you're referring to, those ones that came out in like the 2000s, and they were just they just weren't very good. Is that the ones that you're talking about? So yeah, the old ones, and then
Yeah,
and then the
7, 8,
newest,
9,
the middle, and then the newest ones. So that middle part, I watched the films and they were all right. But the new ones, I really enjoyed the new ones. I went to the cinema to see them. I loved like Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. I think he's just great. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed them. I wouldn't say I'm one to like buy any of the merch, or I would rewatch them. But if they're in the cinema, I'll definitely go and see them for a fun time. So sorry if I'm letting the team down.
Camera is just showing
No, not
one
at all.
part here, but there's
I
a
know, I'm like,
lot of
I'm not
merchandising all around me. I just realized. So wherever I
not
look,
that
there's Star
hardcore,
Wars.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
not that hardcore.
I pretty much love all of them in some way, shape, or form. There's something in every single Star Wars movie I think that I love. They've all got flaws. Even the originals have got some questionable dialogue and continuity stuff here and there. But I try and put that all aside and not nitpick, and I just try and enjoy the overall story and appreciate everybody's viewpoint on it, because there's a lot of bickering goes on in fandom about it, saying, well, you're wrong, the sequels are no good, or the prequels are no good. And, just fine, and you're entitled to your opinion, but I respect everybody else's and let them enjoy what they enjoy. But I think you're right. I think the Disney TV stuff is very encouraging, that they've got a very strong sort of story arc building with very strong characters like Mandalorian, like Ahsoka Tano, and the Kenobi story that's coming up, which is very, very exciting indeed. So, and it's in good hands with Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, who really know what they're doing for the fans, because the fans themselves at the end of the day, which always helps. But no, I'm massively passionate about it, and I've never been quite as much into comics. I've had a few comics over the years, but never been as into it as you clearly are, and having them on the wall there like that and in mint condition. But they look great. The Vader one there I can see, and but really cool stuff indeed. But nice one. Other hobbies, I think. Am I right in remembering that you've told me before that you go running? Is that something you do?
Yeah. So obviously, being in a pandemic meant that last year we couldn't really go out a lot at some point when we were on lockdown. So you were allowed to go out for some exercise, basically, meaning, if you go out running. And I was never a big fan of running at all, because it's, I know, when I'm outside somewhere, my mind starts to get active. I need to, have something in my hands to read or do something or so. But running basically is just the opposite of that. So there's nothing that you do except for just running around. And I never really liked it. Over, I don't know how many years I tried to pick it up, but never really did a lot. But last year then, because I was at home so much, at some point I decided I need to go out of the house now. And I'm just going to go running. I'm just going to run around the neighborhood. And started to do that. Did what's it called? The 100 miles of summer, I think it was called, race. Meaning, no, you don't run 100 miles in one go. That's something I couldn't do at all. But within a 3 months time frame, then you've got basically the challenge to complete that 100 miles. And the idea is then obviously just do it regularly, which is why I then pushed myself to do that. So every day or every few days, you just go running. And I still didn't quite enjoy it, but at least I pushed myself to complete it. Then I injured myself a little bit and had some other issues and stopped running for a while, but picked up again this year. So I completed 2 more of those 100 miles things. And what I'm doing basically during that running is also listening, for example, to podcasts, because that helps me. I realize I'm not just out there to run. I can actually be a bit more, it's called productive. I can learn something. So there are some great podcasts out there. And I started to listening to them. And while some of them basically were things I listened to 1 or 2 times and then said, no, it's not quite for me. There are others then where I realized, I really look forward to hearing those kind of things. And one of them is, for example, again, this one here, your show here is where I thought, what I love about it is, again, hearing about the background of all those other people here. a lot of them, a lot of the previous guests I've seen before online. I think I've never met anyone in person, if I'm not wrong. I would have to check again. But yeah, you get the feeling, I've seen those people online. I know what they're doing with the technology, but I like that additional aspect of hearing where do they come from, what do they do daily, what do they enjoy, something much more personal in the end than just seeing that Twitter handle or something like that, and that's it. And so it helps me in a way then, for example, when was it? Last week or so, when I was listening to an older show with that you had with Azure McFarlane, I wrote, I actually then ran a bit longer than anticipated because I was still not done with that podcast. I wanted to finish listening and say, I'm just going to run until it's over in the end. So, I'm still not a huge fan of running, I would say, but I like going out and in the end and have that exercise plus hearing some of my favorite podcasts now.
I'm really glad to hear that. Not only are we entertaining the masses, but also keeping them fit as well. So,
But please don't make any 4-hour shows, though. That would kill me.
We'll do like 3-hour shows. So we're like, come on, keep going, Rene, keep going.
So the big question is, will you listen to your own episode? Will you listen to this back?
I don't like listening to my own voice. I mean, the way I talk right now, it sounds good to me, but when I hear myself, I think, whoa, that guy's got a very strong accent. And but I might in the end, because in the end, it's also something, would be good to sometimes hear yourself again as, let's call it some kind of feedback again. How do you talk? How could you potentially improve, etc.? So I haven't decided yet because, again, I don't like listening to myself, but I'll think about it in a week's time or so.
Cool stuff. Well, thank you for the kind words about the show. You've said that to me many times privately, and it's massively appreciated when we hear great feedback like that. It means a lot, and we do try and tell stories about not only what people do in the community and in their careers, but as you say, who the real person is, and get to know them a bit. And that's what we love to hear on this show, without a doubt. But most importantly, though, nobody comes on Cloud Conversations and is not asked the following question, which is movie related, and which, in your opinion, here we go, is the better movie, Terminator 1 or Terminator 2?
So I've been asking myself the question ever since I heard you ask other people before, so I had a lot of time to think about it, and I still don't really know in the end. One reason behind it is that I realized it's been quite some time since I watched both of them. So I cannot remember if I watched them in the past, any time within the past 8 years or so. And 8 years, the time frame is specific because my daughter just turned 8. So I know, I don't think I watched anything, or basically Terminator 1 or Terminator 2 since she was born. I don't know when I really watched it the last time. So it's been quite some time, and memory is a bit vague, for example, regarding Terminator 1 and partially also Terminator 2. There are then, when I thought about it again, I'm quite analytical. So I thought about, what do I like, or what do I remember about Terminator 1 that I like? What is it about Terminator 2 that I like? And there are things I like about both of them in the end. My tendency right now is to say probably Terminator 2. Because it feels like Terminator 1 is a bit simpler in a way. Terminator 2 opens it up a lot more with what's happening in there, etc. But I probably also have to watch both of them again at some point soon. Like I said, it's been a long time, and
This gives you a good reason now to go back, watch them again, Rene, and then maybe we'll get you on the show again, and we'll ask you the question again and see if it changes. And give you a good reason to sit down and
I actually checked if they're available on any of the streaming services I'm subscribed to, but sadly these two are, and only a few of the other newer ones. But these two, I don't know, I'm struggling with finding them online through whatever I've got access to.
I think the fact that the later ones are available free to stream tells you all you need to know about them, doesn't it? I think
Yeah.
that you have to pay for the
The
decent
good
ones.
ones, yeah.
Always the case. Whenever you're
Yeah.
looking for a set of to binge watch something, I quite often will go through the various platforms, to Netflix, to Prime, to Now TV, to Disney Plus, and quite often we'll go through all of them. And the thing I want's not there. How frustrating! And you would think between all of those platforms, everything would be somewhere, but not the case. Yeah, I've not watched Terminator 1 or 2 myself since starting this show. Actually, we talk about it all the time, but I've never actually gone and watched them again. I should really try and do that at some point and see if I can find them somewhere, because I don't own them. One thing I have recently watched through, I don't know if either of you have seen this series, which I absolutely love, is the John Wick films with Keanu Reeves. You familiar with that?
Yeah, absolutely love Keanu Reeves. So
I only watched the first one, actually. Didn't continue with the others yet, but I think that's, again, mostly because when I watch something, it's mostly during the lunch break or so, 20 minutes where I eat something, watch something or so, and then stop. So I'm relatively slow these days when it comes to anything else that's basically in the pipeline, regardless whether it's comics or movies or other things.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for
management.
a series, there's a new series which I will promote. It's a Korean series called The Squid Game. It's on Netflix, and it's one of the best series I've ever seen in my life. It's up there in like top 5. So if you're looking for a series, the episodes, I think they're about 40 minutes to 50 minutes each. Which might be easier to digest during your lunch break watching them. But yeah, I'd recommend that. I won't say anything more. I feel like anything I say is going to be a spoiler, but it's an incredible series. So yeah, I'd say check that out.
My wife just binge watched that within a very short time frame, because it just came out a couple of days ago, so I think. But I think she's done already, if I'm not completely wrong. So she spent a lot of free time right now to quickly watch it. She was really also addicted to it and loved it.
Yeah, I did it in a 1 hour, so I just sat there for like 9 hours, like, oh my god, this is amazing. Wasted a whole day, but no, it's really, really good. So I'd recommend watching that.
Amazing.
That's my suggestion.
Cool stuff. You always get such great recommendations when you talk to people on this show. Lots of great ideas and things to watch. But anyhow, it's about time we wind things up. We don't want to take too much of your weekend time up, Rene. But before we go, is there anything that you would like to say to the audience before we wind up, and let them know how they can reach you on social media and the like if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, so easiest way is to just basically go to your favorite search engine and look for my last name, Modery, Modery. It's a quite rare name, and I'm probably... Okay, that sounds a bit too how to say, I'm too self-conscious maybe, but I might be the most famous Modery in the tech space, at least.
Hey.
So at least when I look for the family name, obviously, I mean, I show up on Google page 1 relatively often. So you can easily find me there on Twitter, on LinkedIn, my blog, and that's where you can easily then find me as well. So you can you can quickly get in touch with me easily there. I'm checking Twitter daily, checking LinkedIn daily, and anybody who gets in touch with me, I try to get back to quickly as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Rene, and good luck with everything that you're doing with the event you've got coming up, and good luck to you, Kat. Speaking of that event, I know you'll be awesome as always, because you're brilliant at what you do, and always enjoy hearing you speak. But let's put this one to bed. Kat, any final words? Anything you want to say before we wind up?
No, I just say thank you so much, Rene, for coming on the show. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
and for those listening, make sure you check out the Squid Game. That's what I'll end on.
The Squid Game, yeah. Amazing. So please do try and like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. That does help us an awful lot. Looking at some of the stats, I see we've got a lot of people consuming who are not subscribers, so please go and give that button a little tickle. It doesn't take 2 seconds to do, and it helps us an awful lot. So you can find us at youtube.com/ there's a little something in between, and then it's Cloud Conversations, but we're not hard to find. And you can find us on Twitter as well at CloudCons365, I believe we are now. We changed that recently. slightly, CloudCon365. And we're also on Anchor Podcasts, which enables you to find us on places like Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Google and many others, many more. So please do check us out. Thanks for your support, and we will sign off and see you the next time on Cloud Conversations. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.